It is November 4th, 2025. The Baker Fairburn Hockey Show is back here on a Tuesday morning. I'm your host, Chris Baker, here as always with your Sabres beat writer from The Athletic. That's Matthew Fairburn. You can find all of Matthew's work, his whole catalog, at theathletic.com/Sabres. Matthew's been busy this year creating a ton of content for all of his readers. Get over there, get the deal, get a subscription, and catch up on everything, not just with the Sabres, but every sport, every team that you follow. It's a good little subscription. Comes in handy every morning when I wake up. That's enough of an advertisement for Matthew's employer. I'm going to do an advertisement for the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show. Like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode drops or when Matthew and I go live. You can find the audio version of the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And on those sites, Apple or Spotify, someone sent me a note over the weekend. There is a rate and review spot on the podcast page. Go there, excuse me, and hit 5 stars if you want to write something funny, something nice, something honest, something anything. Do that. It helps. All right, let's get into it. Sabres got back into the win column on Saturday, Matthew Fairburn, with a 4-3 overtime victory over Washington. Tage Thompson, Alex Tuck, and Isak Rosén got first period goals. Bo Byram ended it, I believe, with the first shootout marker of his NHL career. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, I should have had the soundbite ready. Picked up his first victory of the season, making 32 saves, including 5 in overtime. So that leaves the Sabres coming into this week at 5-4-3, tied with Florida for last place in the Atlantic Division. Trending in the right direction, though, Matthew Fairburn, right? Points in 6 straight. They're doing well. But look, when you look at the standings, and I think we should start here today, it's not just the division, but the Eastern Conference is a dogfight. All 16 teams in the conference have a greater than 500 points percentage. At least when I looked half awake this morning. The Sabres, though, even though they're moving in a good direction, still have some work to do. They're the only team that's won less than half of their games, and they have the fewest victories in the entire conference. So moving in the good direction, Matthew Fairburn, but still some work to do for this team.
Yeah, it seems every time there's a little bit of positive energy, good news, there's a little something that knocks them down to earth, right? And maybe not the worst thing in the world for a team that seems to need that edge to stay sharp, but they get the win over the weekend, but also over the weekend, Zach Benson goes on IR. And they get the win over the weekend, and yet they wake up, Sunday morning, Monday morning, like pretty close to the bottom of the Eastern Conference. You're like one loss away from being in sole possession of last place potentially, but also one win away from being back in a playoff spot. So this month will likely be a big one in terms of creating some separation between these teams. And Michael Kesselring mentioned it yesterday in the locker room. The situation really makes every game feel big. They say that every year, right? That these early season games, these early points are really important. But this situation helps it feel that way. So it's the Sabres have gotten themselves back in the fight. If they had continued on the trend that they were on when they started the season 0-3, they would not be in this cluster of teams, right? They would be a few points behind. If they couldn't have fought and gotten a few games to overtime, they probably, wouldn't be in this cluster of teams right now. So they're there, but they continue to battle the health stuff. Benson's out on Monday. Yuri Kulik and Jason Zucker did not practice because of illness and might not play on Tuesday night against Utah. So they've been just ravaged by bad injury luck. But here they are competing in what will be, I think what we've seen is a lot of the good teams have taken a step back. Toronto, Tampa, Florida, because of injuries. And that has created an opening for a whole bunch of teams that were rebuilding at the same time as the Sabres to try to arrive on the scene. And this is going to be sort of the ultimate test of this rebuild and Kevin Adams' tenure.
Every game is important. It's important when you haven't made the playoffs as long as the Sabres have, but it's also very important when you have that home heavy schedule to start the year. We've talked about it on this podcast quite a bit. Sabres are 5-2-1 at home, and they're just 0-2-2 on the road. So a couple more home games this week. Tuesday, tonight, against Utah, Thursday against St. Louis, and they hit the road looking for their first road victory of the season on Saturday in Carolina. Before we
First of
go,
4 straight on the road,
yeah,
too. Carolina, Utah, Colorado, Detroit, all on the road. So that road record will be put to the test for sure.
yeah. So I think that these are critical games. Have to win both. Have to get 4 points this week on Tuesday and Thursday before leaving for that road trip. I think that's, obviously that's always the goal, but these are critical points. Got to, with the parity. It's basically parity that you're seeing in the Eastern Conference. It's crazy what we're seeing 12 games into the season for the Sabres. And look, they have a couple games in hand on some teams. Boston's played 14 already. Some other teams have played 13. Most teams have played 13. So 4 points here for the taking. You're looking good, feeling good before you head out. And then the road work begins for this team. All right. Before we kind of dive into the rest of what we want to talk about today, let's just go back and revisit Saturday's victory. Another 4-3 game, another overtime game. They win this one. I'm trying to think where to start. Lines were kind of shuffled a little bit with the Benson injury. Let's start with UPL because he's been a talking point. I'll give you just a couple thoughts on how I felt UPL did and why it's a good thing that he won the game. I think that's obvious, but he needed that victory. I think the team really wanted to play a good game in front of him. Started out shaky. 2 goals in the first couple of minutes of the game. The Sabres dug themselves an early hole. They tightened things up. I liked UPL's performance. He wasn't super crisp. First goal came off a rebound. 3 guys looking at the puck. Second goal was a 2-on-0. But then if he got it together. I think he held firm. You go into overtime, he made some nice saves. I thought that was a really nice victory for him, even though it wasn't a perfect performance from UPL.
Yeah, they needed that. They really did. I mean, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen has the potential to be a really important player for this team. And I know it would have been easy to write him off before Saturday because of the injury and because of the game he had to start his season. But to see a performance like that from him, sort of with his back against the wall, just given the organizational depth chart in net, there are decisions that need to be made at some point in the next year, let's say 6 months to a year, about who stays and who goes. Because, Alex Lyon's on a 2-year contract. Colton Ellis is on a 2-year contract. Devin Levi is on a 2-year contract and can't sit in the AHL forever. So they do have to make some decisions here at some point, maybe imminently, potentially, on Ellis if they decide to go that route. But to get a game like that from Luukkonen, the ideal scenario is that you have 2 somewhat experienced goalies giving you a 1A and 1B situation, and whoever's playing better gets a little bit more games, but they're close to maybe a 60-40 type of split. Alex Lyon, I think, showed in the game before that one, I'm blanking on the opponent, that you can wear this guy out a little bit, right? Like they played him a lot and he wasn't as sharp. He had an off night. Could that extend for a little bit, right? Like he goes on the hot streak. Could he go on a lukewarm streak where maybe he's playing just okay? That's where you need the other goalie. Like you can't count on Alex Lyon to play 65, 70 games. He's not that guy. He's never been that guy. And that's just not the league. The way the schedule is going to be condensed, you're going to need 2. And I think the preference is that it's Luukkonen for a variety of reasons. One is that he's just been there a little bit longer in terms of experience than Colton Ellis. So he's gone through the grind of an NHL season before. He's not the most experienced goalie, but he does have something to fall back on. there's the contract piece of it, obviously, right? Like you're paying this guy to be one of the guys in net. But I think for the long-term outlook of this situation and the decisions that you have to make as an organization, it's better if they're all playing well. It's better if Luukkonen's playing well going into the summer. If you want to gauge his trade value at some point, it's better to do it if he's playing well than if he's struggling. And so they have these two young goalies behind him that they don't really know about. They know one game of Colton Ellis, and they know fits and starts of Devin Levi, and obviously he's putting together another great season in the AHL. He looks dominant down there. But you don't really know what those guys are at the NHL level. You could argue you don't know what Luukkonen is either, right? Because he's had hot streaks and he's had cold streaks, but he's been through those ups and downs in the NHL already. So just like we're not going to take one game against Toronto and say he's done, get rid of him. Can't take one game against Washington and say he's back. But it's a nice sign with his back against the wall that he was able to rebound and have a game like that. I'm sure his teammates felt good about it too.
Yeah, so I guess a couple things. Levi, I'm still hopeful for Levi, and I know I don't even want to address it. There's some rumors out there, and I don't even think they're credible rumors, so I don't want to go there. But, he is just looking really good, looking really sharp. Again, not always perfect. He's still working on some things, keeping himself in position. But Luke, I'm really hopeful for Levi long term, honestly. Luukkonen, you said that, you could argue that you don't know what you have with Luukkonen, or they don't know what they have with Luukkonen. I think they do know what they have with Luukkonen. They know that they don't know what Luukkonen they're going to get from game to game almost. So, I think that it's really good just to get the win. I think you said it great, with his back against the wall, for him to go out there, make over 30 saves, 31 in total, some good stops in overtime. I thought that was really important how he ended the game and kept them in it after he felt like he lost them the game with that third goal against Toronto. So no, good sign. I don't know where they go tonight though. Like, where do they go tonight in net?
My guess is Alex Lyon, based on practice on Monday. He seemed like he had the net to himself most often. And I do think, well, it's been, 4 days in between? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So he's had 4 full days of not playing since his last game. I think the body of work from Alex Lyon so far this season, you have to continue to treat him like your number one. Again, not like a Connor Hellebuck number one, but I don't think you're going to end up in a very good place as a team. I understand riding the hot hand, but I don't think you're going to end up in a very good place as a team if you're just going, well, if you're just going so recency bias on it, right? Luukkonen play good on Saturday, surely he'll play good on Tuesday. Like, you have a body of work a little bit with Alex Lyon. He had one off game. Give him a chance to see if he can get it right. Like, he earned all this playing time he's gotten. He's rested. Get him back in there and see what he does. If he has an off game, then I'm okay going back to Luukkonen. And if he wins, going back to him again. Then you start riding that wave a little bit. But I don't think one game from Lyon means the net's back open. And, you got to give some of these guys a chance to feel a little bit comfortable in their role and figure out the pecking order a little bit rather than just making it's a different position than anything else on the ice to just open it up entirely to competition 24/7, right? There needs to be some rhythm to it and some order in how you're doing it, but that's not always the strength of NHL coaches, right? Is figuring that out. And I think that will be a storyline to follow. I feel like the goalie position in the micro of this season is going to be pretty fascinating, but also in the macro of the organization and what they're building, it's become the most interesting position as well, just because of Levi being sort of stuck right now. Colton Ellis, this new addition, that's real competition as far, for Levi, as far as like a peer that's his age. And, like you said, there's the rumors out there about Levi, which I don't have really anything that can substantiate that. But that said, you know, I don't think he'll want to sit in the AHL forever, right? But I think he's comfortable being down there this year. I think, he signed a contract. He kind of knew what he was signing up for. But I think he knew he was signing up for Lion, and then Georgiev and Colton Ellis come along. And I think it would be fair for him to wonder what comes next. But I think he's the type of guy that's pretty locked in where he is, and we'll worry about that in the summer. But they will have decisions to make to kind of clear up this logjam.
If you trust what Levi, his quotes coming into the season and going down, he was saying it was almost like he was not happy to be there, but I think he was happy to be there. He liked being there. He knew that he had work to do in Rochester, that is, and I think he was fine with it. I have just trust what the players say. Sometimes they play the game with the media and they, try to say the right things. Behind the scenes, they're baiting and switching. I don't get that vibe from him. I'm not worried about him long term. His play looks really good though. So,
You
anyways,
can't always take what they say at face value, but you
right.
can take what they say, body language, right?
Yes.
Like it's like, okay, of course he's not going to stand up there and say, I wish they would trade me, right? And like
Yeah.
I don't want to be down here. But you can get a gauge. Like watch the way he spoke and read the way he
Genuine.
spoke this year, and compared to some of the things he was saying the first time he went down. Not that he had a bad attitude the first time he went down, but he was sort of like, "This will be okay. This will be a pit stop." This, he,
Yeah.
he was kind of like he got back up after a game because of an injury, and he was like, "Oh, I'll always remember that experience in Rochester." I'm like, "Dude, you're going back there." Like he hadn't quite wrapped his head around the whole thing, and now he's just in a different place. So yeah, but I understand certainly the speculation and the fear of like how long is this guy gonna feel that way, like going into next year. He turned 25 or 24 in December,
24 returns.
so he's still like, this is still, yeah, he turns 24 in December,
Turns
so
24 in December.
he's still young by goalie standards.
Oh,
And
yeah.
next year would be the year I think that he and everybody else would like to see him make the permanent jump and do it well. And things are going to have to happen in the organization for that to occur. But the reason I like what they've done in net, albeit it hasn't been perfect from a results standpoint, but the reason I like it is because they're no longer painting themselves into the corner that Devin Levi has to be the guy, right? He has to be that backup and be ready. They have options now, and they can gauge based on how he performs in the AHL, which so far has been excellent, and they can go from there and make decisions in the summer. They're not, for the last 2 years, they put themselves in a spot where it was Devin Levi was going to be one of their NHL goalies. And if it didn't work, they had nothing to fall back on. Now they have not only two guys in the NHL that have NHL experience, but they have a third guy who is sort of another lottery ticket. Like, I don't think he's quite the prospect that Devin Levi is, maybe, but I also don't know that he's so far off either. It's kind of hard to tell at that position, and he was a third round pick, and he also put up great numbers in the AHL last season.
Well,
So
he's paid his dues. That's
yeah,
like the
he's
big thing. He's
well,
paid
and
his
yeah,
dues.
that's part of this too. Is his development path was the proper one. Devin Levi's was not. That's not Devin Levi's fault so much as it's the organization's fault. But that could have, maybe Colton Ellis closed the gap because he was developed properly. You don't know. And having another lottery ticket, giving yourself options is a good place to be, I think, as an organization in net. And I know it's an interesting position because it's the most important one on the ice most nights, but it seems like a lot of NHL teams just don't know how to handle it and don't know how to figure out who's good and who's not, don't know how to necessarily develop guys properly at all levels, including the NHL. So we'll see if the Sabres can get this right, because it would be pretty big for changing their fortunes now and in future seasons.
Devin Levi, you said, has been excellent. Just statistically, he is 5-0-0, won all 5 of his starts, 1.8 goals against average, 933 save percentage to start the year with Rochester. Just to put a bow on Luukkonen, I'm fine spacing out his starts, letting him continue to put together some good practices before getting back in net, but keeping an eye on Alex Lyon, because if Alex Lyon comes back down to earth, it would be pretty incredible if UPL finds his game at the same time and they offset each other. And whatever it takes to get this team some wins. And you have Colton Ellis sitting right there. I know that's what you want to say. It's on the tip of your tongue. You got to find a spot to get him a start, probably.
I was going to say that's what you want. If Alex Lyon comes back down to earth, you want it timed out with Luukkonen rising up. You don't want both of them falling down to earth at the same time. That's the whole point of having a goalie tandem. It's the whole idea of bringing Lyon in, because they know that Luukkonen rides hot and cold. So if he's riding cold, you got to hope that Lyon's going well. And yeah, if they're both down, you got 3 goalies. Might as well use them. So I'm not in a rush to get Colton Ellis back in, but Thursday against St. Louis, looks like a potential spot, depending on
his
what
old
you
team.
want to do. You're going to have, a cluster of games next week that I believe is 3 and 4 nights, with a back-to-back on the road, Utah and Colorado. So there's going to be an opportunity to get different guys in there. But yeah, Colton Ellis against his old team might be a spot to get him in, as long as he's feeling good. What's interesting, though, and this is perhaps a good segue into talking about the rest of the roster, but they might have some roster gymnastics to do here. And, by the time people are listening to this, potentially in the afternoon, because if Yuri Kulik and Jason Zucker can't go, it sounds like Jason Zucker almost definitely won't be able to play against Utah based on how he was feeling yesterday. Kulik is dealing with some fluid buildup in the inner ear. And so that feels like something that he might be able to get cleared up, a little bit of an unknown. But if you don't have either of those guys, I mean, even if you don't have one, you might want to make a call up. And you can't make a call up unless you waive somebody or somebody goes to injured reserve.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it works exactly. Colton Ellis hasn't played since he had the back tightness, right? So theoretically, you could retroactive him, but does it need would that pass the sniff test, right? I don't think he's still dealing with that. He's been practicing every day.
Probably
I think he's
not.
fine. I don't think that would pass the sniff test as far as retroactive IR. So then you need to waive somebody. Ellis would be one of the candidates, right? They're coming up on that 30-day
coming up,
mark.
I think 2 days from now, isn't it?
I don't think they would want to do that right now. Geertsen would be a candidate for sure to get waived, I would think. I mean, he's not playing a whole lot, and you want a forward that you can use, but he would have to clear waivers. I think it's a safe bet that he would, and you could bring him back up when everybody, when things sort themselves out. But all of a sudden, they were practicing yesterday. I enjoyed this. I had some people responding to me on X when I tweeted out the lines with Bryson was playing wing just to fill in because they didn't have enough. They didn't have 12 healthy forwards. And there was a lot of excitement on Twitter, like, hey, maybe this could be something. Maybe this Jacob Bryson, the winger, could be something. A groundswell of support for a position change for Jacob Bryson. I got a kick out
down,
of that,
everyone.
But I was like, hey, you never know. Sort of like the reverse that some guys have pulled. I feel like you've seen guys go from forward to D in their career, but D up to forward.
Mason Geertsen
is the prime example. You never know. So, but no, he was just filling in, and I guess you could put together that Oslin. You could do like an Oslin, Quinn, Roseanne line. It seems like if Kulik can't play, you have no choice but to put Tage Tage and or Greenway, sort of like a hybrid of who's taking faceoffs where and maybe shared center responsibilities. But certainly not a pretty lineup if you're down Benson, Zucker, and Kulik, which is a definite possibility on Tuesday night.
That's hockey. Gotta build the depth, gotta deal with injuries. It's a long season, it's a physical game. A couple things. So Rosane, let's start with him first. I do want to talk about Greenway, but Rosane playing with Kulik and Quinn on Saturday. So they got that whole Kulik-Rosane combo back that played a lot of time together in Rochester. I liked Rosane's game. 3 shots on goal. I don't have his ice time up in front of me. I can bring it up real quick, but I think he had 17 shifts. It was the goal, his first NHL goal, good shot. That's what he does, is shoot the puck, finds little soft spots, gets open. You had a feeling that he can get one with his first shot attempt in the game. Gets one early. After Greenway, who had 4, and Malenstein, who had 3, there was Rosane and Doan, I think it was. Each had 2 hits in the game. Isak Rosane recorded 2 hits. Now, we've talked about Rosane. Couple block shots. What do you have, 3? 3 blocks or 2? I don't have it up. I closed the stupid window by mistake. But we've talked about Rosane in the past not coming up and just having that FU to take someone's spot and to just go after it. And that was the first time that we saw traces of that, or more beyond traces of that, I think, with him at the NHL level. This was game, keep me honest, 16 in his NHL career. He's 22 years old. Right? 16th game, I think it was, that he scored his first goal. I get this a lot on Twitter covering the prospects. Like, oh, if he, when's this guy going to score? I get it. Like, he's a goal scorer. He's a first round pick. Perspective. Thomas Vanek took him 15 NHL games to score his first goal in the league. Sometimes it takes guys a little time to get that first one. And maybe this could be something. Maybe it's nothing. But if he keeps playing like he did against Washington on Saturday, it's probably something, given the book of experience that he's built in the past couple of seasons in Rochester.
The number one thing I noticed was the confidence, and Lindy Ruff said after practice on Monday, he didn't look like a nervous kid coming up to play an NHL game, which maybe was the case in the past. And you have to wonder if, certainly the 15 games helped, right? You get the taste a few times and you go up and you come back down and you go up and you come back down, and it's not all brand new to you. But I also think seeing some of the other guys, right? Seeing Osland and Kulik, some of his peers that he played with in Rochester go up, have a little bit of success. Maybe, seeing Kozak up there, doing what he had been doing early in the season, I think gives you a little added fire to be like, look, this lineup is starting to look like the lineup in Rochester, right? A lot of these guys are starting to sprinkle in and filter up. I can do the same thing. And using his speed, like he was skating really well. And that's where the confidence comes from, the shot and the speed. Those 2 skills aren't as useful if you're not playing confident, if you're hesitant, if you're, gripping the stick. It's going to take away from the effectiveness of your shot and your skating. And if he has those 2 things going, we've talked about it in the past with Rosane that even though he continues to need to get stronger and, kind of, develop that grown man strength, he does have a decent defensive game. He's got a good stick and he knows where to be. He makes the right plays. And so you see that with the block shots. The willingness to hit is definitely encouraging. And again, a sign of some confidence and some maturity. So to your point, it is a real positive development if he can become something. If he can become does he profile necessarily as a top line winger? I don't see that necessarily.
Maybe in a couple of years he could.
But you never know. Yeah, you never know. I think
Maybe in
at
a
the
couple of
very
years. Not
least,
right now. Yeah.
a good middle six, secondary scorer, a good piece to have on your second or third line, depending on who's healthy. A guy that maybe can bump up there in a couple of years, depending on what happens with a lineup, right? Like we're seeing now, Zucker was up there and, different guys, have gotten that ice time up at the top of the lineup. It happens all across the league throughout a season. And you can envision him being kind of a spot play, but at the very least, having a guy like that as a middle six winger would be nice, like to get that out of a relatively high first round pick, that a lot of people I think had written off. He didn't have a good prospect tournament and, wasn't necessarily out, didn't kick the door down in the preseason to earn a spot or anything. But they've been desperate for bodies because of injuries, and he finally took advantage of an opportunity, which was nice to see.
Yeah, you get that a lot with the prospects. Like this is why they have to have the depth, to call a guy up, and then sometimes some guys can flash, or sometimes a light goes on and they start to get it. He might be a guy, like I said, that starts to get it, but I don't buy into this. He's 22. If he doesn't do something right now, if you look at like his ice time that he's had in his previous 15 games, it's not like he's been given a lot of opportunity, a lot of shifts, opportunity to get into rhythm within a game. And he hasn't earned it also. I get that. But a lot of our fans get this, but there's still a chunk that don't. Like they're so quick. You mentioned it, writing guys off. And I don't get that. Like if a guy doesn't make it to the NHL when he's 22, does that mean he's a bust? Like we're so quick to hit that bust button, as a hockey society. I know he was a first round pick. He was also a first round pick in a very weird time of scouting during the pandemic. And they did overdraft him. He was a first round talent, but not, what was he, 14?
I believe so, yeah.
He wasn't 14. They overdrafted him a little, but he was a first round talent. But utility moving forward, could be a spare part. I mean, you got Mason Garrison on your roster, right? He could be a spare part and a pretty good spare part. He's a guy, we've talked about it maybe last year when talking about Rosane, middle of the lineup, third line, penalty kill using his speed, stick. He's got defensive acumen, and the benefit of being young is that he's going to get stronger. He's going to keep getting stronger for like the next 2 years, at least. So I like the effort. Really curious. He's obviously going to get an opportunity to keep playing tonight against Utah. I don't think there's any question about that, just given the Kulik, Zucker developments and what else. Recall, Ostlund makes sense. Scored a goal. Really, a rifle shot on the power play the other night. Helenia still sitting there. And I just think it would be fun. But we'll see what they do. We'll see what they do on that.
Probably depends where you want a guy to play, right? And, if Kulik can't go, that's probably, like Ostlund and Rosane probably have a bigger body of work together. And so if they're going to be playing together, maybe that ties into it. And it seems like they've had a hesitance about Hellenius calling them up when there was opportunities to do it. So we'll see. Maybe it's a way to light a fire under Ostlund a little bit. Let's give Hellenius a shot after Ostlund already had one. We'll see, but be interesting to see.
I think it would be Ostlund. I think it would be Ostlund.
I think more than likely they're going to go back to him. Age, experience. They need wins, right? They need wins. And you brought up Geertsen. He seems like the most likely candidate to get waived, at least as we're looking at it as outside observers, right? We know Lindy Ruff really likes this guy, really likes the player. One interesting nugget from practice yesterday, Geertsen, which probably has nothing to do one way or the other with what happens on the roster, but I found it interesting. First time I've seen it. Geertsen was giving pointers after practice. Like he and Beck Mallenstein were doing like fighting practice. And I found that interesting because we don't see him fight, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it was, I don't know if it was like, hey, I might be going down. Like, I should probably teach you. Or it was just kind of spur of the moment. Like, hey, I've got this guy on my team. Maybe he can give me some pointers because he doesn't really fight. And so,
Palestine, not
but he
really.
has,
No, he
he
has in
has
the past, but he's
certainly
not.
he's got the body, he's got the size and he's
Yeah,
got the attitude, you would think, to pull it off. So I found that somewhat interesting. If Geertsen's gonna go down for a bit, or end up on waivers, at least he's passing on some wisdom, while he's here.
it's a good little nugget. Yeah, good little nugget, good little observation from practice. One player that does not mind fighting, Jordan Greenway, and his impact on the team has been, I think, notable, borderline significant since coming back. Not just because they had to put him in at center to plug a hole, but the open ice hits, whether it's Elias Lindholm or Chisholm the other night. He turned the game. I think that he turned the Washington game around. They had already scored, I think, by the time he did that. I think Tage had already gotten on the board before Greenway made that hit and got in that fight with Tom Wilson. But we talked about it when you lost Kozak, you almost had to get a guy like Greenway back. They got him back. I think that the team moving in the right direction, and he's a big part of it, keeping it steady, even though they had a couple, overtime losses mixed in. What's your take on Greenway right now? I think he's really become an important player. And a year ago, coming into last season, I've said this before, I didn't know where he fit. Now it's like you really need the damn guy. and,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
he earned the contract, and I think he's showing why they gave him the money that he got
well,
in his extension.
health is going to be the big question, right? Is of whether he can earn that contract. But he has been an impactful player for them in bursts at times over the last few years since he got here. I look at that play and I think that is what you need to be a quote unquote protector, right? That Lindy Ruff talks about with Geertsen, right? A guy that makes everybody else feel a little bit safer. The fighting is such a small piece of it. That hits like that are what make other teams pause about taking liberties, because I think that feels more dangerous to them than the possibility of having to fight. You can turn down a fight. Like, a lot of stuff needs to happen for a fight to happen. You can turn down a fight. You can protect yourself in a fight. You can, you know, there's ways to get around that as an opponent. I mean, look at Geertsen. They just don't fight him when he's in the lineup. Like, he's wanted it a few times and they just don't fight him. They just let him be on the ice, and he hasn't been able to get into one fight. And it hasn't necessarily changed how teams play. But if you're making big hits like that, and they know that a potentially over the line hit could be matched with an equal hit on the other side, that is what matters. Like, that is how you become harder to play against. Is like, man, Jordan Greenway might run me over in the neutral zone. Like, that was something. Like, we haven't seen that from Greenway. Like, he is, all this time off, I think has energized him in a way, made him hungry. I know he was really anxious to get out there, and he's capable of answering. He's like, all right, you want to fight? Like, let's do it. And probably just as, like, is he just as good at fighting as Mason Geertsen? Like, probably, right? I mean, he's capable at it for sure. And he can play, right? Like, he can kill penalties. You can move him up and down the lineup. I mean, Greenway's a popular target for criticism, I think, but he's helping hold things together in this lineup. He came back at a good time considering some of the other injuries they had, and they've needed him. And I just like the energy he's playing with.
Yeah, the injuries. I mean, a guy like Greenway's going to help. He's not going to score a lot of goals. Thankfully, Alex Tuck is getting his offensive rhythm going. Tage Thompson getting his offensive rhythm going. Tuck, 4 goals, 4 assists in his last 6 games. Thompson, 4 goals, 2 assists in his last 5 games. Going to need those guys to step up as they kind of figure out and build the lineup around those guys. What are the lines going to look like? So it's going to be kind of interesting. Did you get any indications yesterday? I know, you mentioned Bryson on a wing. We don't know if or who they're going to call up, but Rosane, is there an opportunity to move him up in that Zucker spot? Like, what do we think we're going to see from a configuration tonight when the Sabres take the ice? Do you have any ideas or thoughts on that?
I think it's you keep Doan, McLeod, Tuck together, right? That's one of the best lines in hockey right now,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of generating goals and expected goals. All the metrics you look at, that's a really good line. They're going. You keep that line together. That's for all intents and purposes your top line. I think
Mm-hmm.
given matchups and ice time,
That's
I feel
fair.
like that's
That's
kind
fair.
of with how things are right now. The fact that 2 of your top line players are potentially out. Well, at least one of them is, and Benson and Kulik might be out as well. They had Greenway and Quinn with Thompson yesterday. Certainly that would potentially change if Kulik is healthy. I think you could put Kulik with Greenway and Thompson and put Quinn probably in that Bryson spot on the left wing because they had um, Krebs with Roseanne, Geertsen, Dunn, Mallenstein. So
Hmm.
not ideal. I mean, you got to have another healthy body or two potentially. You would ideally Kulik can go. It seems more likely. It sounds like that inner ear is like the symptom he's dealing with, and whatever illness might have caused it has otherwise kind of cleared out. But that can be a tricky thing to get rid of. And if he wasn't practicing even 2 days after that game, it's clearly lingering. So we'll see what happens. But
Hmm.
I mean, it's necessary at the very least to get one call up in. And you're starting to see the challenge of having not just Geertsen on the roster, but 3 goalies and Geertsen, right?
Yeah.
That this is where that shows up when you need some bodies. You need guys that can give you minutes and useful minutes. When Geertsen's played, it's been 4 or 5 minutes a night. I don't think you can afford that with already leaning on some of the top guys, more than you normally would. So I would expect at least one guy gets called up from Rochester here to fill a spot because even if Kulik's healthy, you're still looking at Geertsen in your lineup. And I don't know. Do you want that? Probably not, but I
I can't
guess you
wait to
got to
see
do
what
it.
they do.
Yeah.
I cannot
Maybe
wait to
you
see what they do.
maybe you go 11-7, but that doesn't
Uh,
seem entirely necessary either because of the 6 that you have.
yeah,
Unless you
exactly. No, that's
unless you
not an
really
option.
I think you'd rather just have Geertsen out there just in case. Not that Utah's a team that's gonna be throwing them, but I mean, better to just have him than Bryson, who's probably not gonna give you much when you have 6 quality defensemen.
Hit the like button, everyone. If you like the idea of sending Mason Geertsen down to Rochester. Um, we have a few minutes left here. Matthew Fairburn, Utah coming in tonight. One of the better teams in hockey. They're a good home team, good road team. Losers of 2 straight. JT Paterka off to a nice start to his mammoth career. 12 games in. He's got 4 goals and 10 total points. I'll just ask you a simple question, I guess. Did Paterka get a thank you tweet from the Sabres when he was traded? And more importantly, do you think he's going to get a thank you video?
I don't recall a thank you tweet. I definitely don't recall any sort of emotional, heartfelt words from Kevin Adams in the press conference following the trade, which we've gotten, right, with the Cousins trade and other trades that have happened before. This felt like there was a little bit more, you know, grit in the teeth and just I don't even know if he was mentioned by name in the press conference after the trade. So will he get a video? I think he will. will it be a thank you video? I don't know about that. I don't know. I think it might just be kind of
Welcome back,
welcome
JJ.
back, JJ
Yeah,
Peterka, little highlight clips. I'll tell you what though,
a
it would
shortened one.
be pretty epic if they didn't.
Yeah,
Like I would give them a lot of credit if they didn't. Because we see these for everybody now, right?
they've
Like
gotten out of hand, man.
they've
Yeah,
gotten out of hand, but it would be nice to just see a little bit of the rivalry or a little bit of just I don't know, it's sports, right? It's competition. This is part of it to say like, no, you're not getting
yeah.
one.
You want to see the FU in your team at all levels.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Great way to put it. And so I would tip my cap if he didn't get one. I'd be like, all right, and uh or maybe, throw him up there on the bench and give everybody a chance to boo, And, clearly this was a guy that made it difficult on them on his way out. As far as I don't think they entered the summer thinking, all right, number one item on the to-do list to reshape this roster is to get rid of JJ Peterka after the season that he had. I don't buy that. I think him making things difficult in contract negotiations is what forced their hand a little bit. Not to mention the body language all throughout the season. And sort of the attitude all throughout the season was not great by his own admission. Like he should have had a better attitude at times during the season. So, if they give him, I'm not going to knock him if they give him a tribute video. Obviously, that everybody gets one besides JBD. He didn't get one, but what can you do?
He got one from us. We should have just produced
Right.
our own, like because we're
Posted the highlight video, and
huge JBD boosters here on the
right.
Baker Fairburn Hockey Show.
Thank you, JBD. So I'll be curious if the bill. I don't know what the attendance is going to be a Tuesday against Utah. Is Peterka is not Eichel, right? So it's not going to bring everybody back just to boo him. It wasn't as dragged out or as messy as the Eichel departure. And look, I think everybody understands why Peterka would want a change of scenery. I just think there is an element of like, had this guy earned the right coming out of his entry level contract to be like this difficult and to have the kind of attitude so early because he was kind of telegraphing it in hindsight with his body language, right? I mean, like he had made up his mind seemingly. I mean, if we can connect the dots now based on how he was carrying himself, like the twinkle left his eye a while ago. And
the signs were there for about 2 years.
Yeah. And so, this is a guy that was drafted high. They traded up to get him. They put him in the NHL, gave him prime opportunity pretty early.
Owner liked
And
them.
the owner liked him a lot. I mean, and look, we all understand why guys would not want to play in Buffalo for this team, given the way things have gone. But there's also a certain taste it leaves in your mouth when this guy didn't even seemingly give it too much of a chance, coming out of his entry level deal to not be willing to extend. But I do look at this trade and I see potentially a trade that both sides win.
Yeah.
Both sides get a little bit of what they needed. Certainly the Sabres, I think I've said it and I'll probably continue to say it. I mean, it would take Peterka turning into like a 100 plus point player, I think, for me to, maybe 85 plus for me to start to say, I don't know about that one. But it's easy to like what they got in return. I mean, Josh Doan has he been the MVP of this team through 12 games? I think you could argue that.
You can make
And
the argument. They don't have one right now.
they don't really have one, but he's played really well. He's not too far behind
Yeah.
Peterka in terms of
Lion or
points.
yeah, I mean, it's a new guy no matter what, I think, but yeah.
And Kesselring, I don't think we've seen the full version of Kesselring yet, but we're getting glimpses of the type of piece that he could be. So, two guys that they really needed, and Peterka could continue to score points and get his goals, but we'll see over the course of the season, like how does that, and over the course of a few seasons, how his overall 200-foot game develops, and whether he can develop that kind of consistency. And also the other piece of the trade, at least for this season, was the dollars, right? And what else could you do if you kept Peterka and his dollars, considering Kesselring and Doan are cheaper right now? Cap space wise, they would have been right up against it, still needing to fill the hole that Kesselring fills and still needing the player type that Doan brings. So maybe it's a win-win because clearly he's doing well in Utah, and Doan and Kesselring were somewhat expendable to the Mammoth, but they've been pretty vital, and I think will continue to be vital to what the Sabres are this year.
I'm not going to hype it up like some kind of, wrestling promo or anything like that, but I think that the Sabres team is going to get up for this game.
They
I
should.
think they're going to get up for this game. That's what I expect. I'm not
They
saying
should
someone's going to
because
lay
of
them out or
Peterka.
anything like that.
No,
Because of
no,
Peterka,
but
no physical, like maybe a little whack here and there, but I think they're going to get up.
yeah, you don't want
It's a
this
guy
guy to
that
come into your
exited their
building
group. That's right.
and kind of just stick it to you. It's like the Eichel thing in that regard, but probably in a way, I don't know. I guess it depends. Like Eichel came up with a different group than he left, right? A lot of those guys, I think, and the Eichel thing was messy for different reasons, and Eichel had been through it. He had signed the contract extension. He'd really like given it a chance. And you could argue how he departed and how he handled himself the whole time. Like I get all that, but I think there was a different sense of like, this guy gave it a chance. This guy wants a surgery that the team won't let him get. Like there was a lot of different factors. Peterka came up with a lot of this group, went through the highs of the 22-23 season and the lows that came after that. And all of these guys are familiar with him. And he really, he's the one that got to bolt of his own doing. I think there's that piece of it. And there's a little bit, Doan isn't this type, right? Doan has a lot of gratitude for the organization and everything there in Utah. But there's got to be a little bit of like, these guys wouldn't give Doan the opportunity. These guys, they didn't want to include him in the trade, but it wasn't a deal breaker because he wasn't a top of the lineup guy. Well, guess what? He looks like one right now, and these guys love him already. So there's multiple angles where this is a game that the team very much should get up for, and that might, help. You need that little extra galvanizing factor when you got the patchwork lineup that they've got going right now.
Patchwork lineup. They need the 2 points. Got to get all the points they can, especially at home. So I think it helps. It's good timing for Utah to come here and maybe help drag the Sabres into the fight tonight against the Mammoth. Matthew Fairburn, I'm going to take us out of here. But before we do leave, we probably need some plugs.
Yeah, you can head to theathletic.com/Sabres, and I've got a mailbag that has either already should be posted by the time this is in everybody's podcast feeds, in everybody's ears. So we've got that. I know I mentioned it on Friday, gave people fair warning, but anybody who missed it, apologies for no post-game coverage in Washington. I was out of town for a wedding for the night, but back to regularly scheduled programming this week, and a couple other stories coming down the pipe. Over the weekend, I had a story on Alex Lyon and his emergence and the rarity of a post-30 breakout for a goalie. That was a fun one to put together. And I'll have some other broader in scope Sabres stories here coming soon. I think one might run this week. But there's your plugs. There's your teasers. And I'll be covering this revenge game tonight. This Mammoth Sabres WWE style clash.
There you go. You had to hype it up. All right. Well, hopefully Alex Lyon, by the way, I don't know if that's giving you hope for your own NHL career, but maybe it's keeping the dream alive for you.
That's right.
In the over 30 zone. Yeah.
15 straight years undrafted, but you never know.
You never know. Keep hope alive, Matthew Fairburn. All right. You just heard Matthew's plugs. Head over to theathletic.com/Sabres. Read everything that he's been writing. Subscribe if you haven't already. For the production crew that hopefully is down there mashing up an avocado. I got a couple of nice avocados. I was eyeballing them this morning before I came up here and fired up this laptop. I'm Chris Baker. We'll see you again next time.